As men, I think we need to be healthy in all areas of life, physically, spiritually, and mentally. I think if we're in those three areas, if we can be healthy, then we are going to be healthy in other areas such as financial, relational, etc. Those three areas I think are really what needs to be a big focus. And then from there flows out a lot of other things. And we can't separate those things. I think a lot of times we want to separate, you know, obviously, spiritual is at the head of it all. We need to prioritize our relationship with Christ and our spiritual life, our prayer, reading the word, all of those things. But that doesn't mean that physical health has no value or mental health has no value, right? If we have terrible mental health, terrible physical health, then our spiritual health is going to suffer. Our ability to serve God and to serve others is going to suffer. And so that's really what I want to dive into today is how can we be healthy as men in each one of those areas and coming together to be the man that God has called you to be in each one of those areas and really just healthy as a person. So I'll start out kind of talking about my journey through this a little bit and where I see this. So I grew up racing dirt bikes, and as an athlete, I worked out a lot and really almost worked out just about every day. But my mindset was do more, eat less, and be very disciplined. And while discipline is a good thing, obviously that mindset around my food and my health was not the best. And during that time, I was a believer. I did know Christ, but I wasn't aware of what I'm doing right now in terms of helping men honor God with their body, steward the body that God has given them so that they can be the man that God has called them to be. And like I said, I was scared to get fat, so I restricted myself. And then that would lead to binging, turning to food when things got stressful. And because I was restricting my food and my intake, that caused stress on my body. And obviously, low energy came from that, lack of performance. All of these things added up because of that nutrition and overworking my body with my training. And so at a point, I realized, this is not going to be sustainable. And really when that turned was when I stopped racing dirt bikes actually. I was so focused on racing, it didn't not getting fat, all of these things. And when I quit racing, I didn't have that racing goal, that athletic goal. I guess I still had athletic goals, but I didn't have that specific racing goal. And then hired a coach, and he really helped me change my mindset around all the things with my nutrition and fueling and training to realize that you have to fuel your body to be the best that it can be in every area, not just your training, not just building muscle or losing fat, but in your work, in your family life, and all of the things. And so after that, I was able to put on some muscle. I was able to really begin to feel good, feel my best, be stronger. And as a result of that, obviously had more energy and actually felt good. And so that really opened my eyes to if I am disciplined, I can really grow in a lot of other areas. And what I mean by that is during that time was when I would say I grew probably the most in my whole life in all the other areas of life, in my spiritual walk with the Lord, but also mentally as a person and maturity and all the things. And I think a lot of that came from I had good mentors in my life, not just this coach that was with me on the fitness and nutrition side, but also the on my relationship with God as well. I had good mentors in my life. And so I was disciplined physically, and that taught me how to be disciplined spiritually as well and how to get those habits and continue in those habits as I grew in my walk with the Lord. And so it bled over into other areas of life. And so, as a rhetorical question for you guys, I want to ask you, have you ever felt like you're strong in your faith, but kind of running on fumes physically? Or, maybe it's the other way around. You're working hard in the gym and you're proud of the physique that you built, but you feel empty spiritually. Again, these things go together, but at the same time, they are different areas. And so, what I want to get here to today is a simple framework and talk through some things that you can take into your life to become the man that God has called you to be to your fullest potential, physically, spiritually, and mentally, to become the man that God has called you to be. So, why does this all matter? What does this look like, and how can we do this? So, first of all, why it all matters. 1 Corinthians 6:19 and 20. You guys have probably heard this verse, especially if you've hung out on my channel, my YouTube, a little bit here and there. But it talks about the body being a temple, the body being a temple of the Holy Spirit. And really, a lot of 1 Corinthians 6, especially verses 12 through 20, goes through and talks about your body is not just a physical being here on earth. It has spiritual significance to it. And so our body isn't just something that we can go and do whatever with. And then verses like Romans 12:2, the renewing of your mind. Obviously, your mind has a lot to do with everything that you do, right? Your mind is kind of the filter of what you do as a person and who you are. And so with verses like those, then we can take into, okay, obviously our spirit matters, our spiritual life matters, our walk with the Lord. That is really where everything, as far as our identity, what we see as truth, and what we see as eternity and creation and all these things, where we get the base of us is from our spiritual life. And so from there, okay, we can say, okay, so that's the base, that's our identity, that's where everything comes from. And then our body, it's the vessel that helps us carry that out. It helps us do what God has called us to do, right? It gives us the energy to live out our calling, to live out our spiritual truth that we believe as followers of Christ. And then our mind, I mentioned this earlier, but it's kind of the filter of all of these things, right? If we're taking in trash, eventually that trash is going to come out, whether that's what we look at, what we listen to, any of these things. Same thing goes for food, what we intake through our mouth as well. Eventually that trash is going to catch up with us. Or on the other direction, if we're taking in, good solid music, we are reading our Bible, we are having a gratitude, journal or prayer walk, all of these things can help us mentally, physically, and spiritually. So, with that being said, let's go through each one of these areas and look at some things that you can take into your life to become better and stronger as the man that God has called you to be in each one of these areas. So, the first one being our spiritual health. I think 1 Timothy 4:8 says this well. It says, for physical training is of some value, but godliness has value for all things. And goes on from there. But the point of that verse is our spiritual health cannot be second, third, or fourth. It has to be number one. And so I always like to start with that verse because no matter what, our spiritual health is what matters most. Even me as a fitness and nutrition coach, our fitness, nutrition, our health physically is not and never above our relationship with Christ and what we believe as followers of Christ. That is always going to be number one. So with that being said, that needs to be our top priority. So with this, a few things that you can do is obviously getting into the word and daily prayer. Now, this doesn't have to be some crazy drawn out thing that you have to spend hours and hours and hours every single day. Now, it definitely can be. And if you're in a position to do that, that's amazing. But if you're just getting started or you're wanting to grow in this, no matter where you are, think about what's the next best little thing that you can do. Maybe it's starting with 10 minutes of going on to the YouVersion Bible app and looking at the devotion that they have every day and going through that, the daily devotion, the daily verse of the day. And then from there, maybe you start one of their Bible plans. And then from there, maybe you get into the Bible plan that goes for reading through the Bible in a year. And so this can look a lot of different ways for a lot of different people, but having some sort of quiet time in your day, some time to spend praying, maybe on your way to work. And then, you can listen to the Bible as well on your way to work when you're driving, all of these things. And then also from there, obviously you can read the word too. And so just setting aside time to do those things, Bible and prayer with that one. And then also, obviously, community and church is important. Now, I don't think you have to go to church to get to heaven, but I do think that community is a big way that you can grow as a believer and that you can be equipped and discipled and all of these things in church and in community. And so finding a community that's going to help you become that man that you want to become, that God has called you to become. And then from there, let's move into the physical side. So with this, I think you have to keep it simple. You can't overthink this. I know a lot of you guys are busy. You have businesses, you have ministry, you have family. And so we have to keep this simple. That's really what I do and help clients with, is keeping this simple so they can do all the other things in life. Having their physical health enable them to be able to do the other areas of their life to their fullest potential. So with this, strength training, full body, 2 to 3 times a week is what I would recommend for this. And then from there, getting your steps in. This can look like prayer walks. Again, tying it to your spiritual health. I think that's super important. Tie these areas together where you can. And then getting your protein in, getting your water in, getting your sleep in. Stress is going to be a huge thing here. Now, again, tying these two things together. If you are stressed out, you haven't slept well, do you think that you can be the man that God has called you to be to your fullest potential? I don't think so. And so getting good, adequate sleep, good, adequate rest, stress management is huge. And again, prayer can help with that. Good sleep, all the things, they lead together. And so with this, I can give you guys a little bit as far as what I do. But before I do that, I want to say that you have to get away from this all or nothing, perfect or nothing mindset. If that's the case, then you're not going to be able to stick to anything. I've done some videos on this in the past. I actually think the most recent video that I did was on this. And so in terms of what I do, I try to plan out my week. When am I going to work out? And what are my goals for the week with my food? And I keep my food pretty simple most of the time. It's most of the time from the time I wake up to right before dinner time is just about the same, with a few variations throughout the week or week to week with my food. A lot of times I will kind of plan that out and it's pretty similar. And so getting consistent can really help. Getting in a rhythm and a routine, having a system can really help with these things. So that's probably the biggest tip that I would give you, that I've kind of implemented and that I really like to do, is keep it simple, have a consistent routine. And then moving on to the mental health side of things, a lot of this is going to be similar to what we've already talked about, but having the mindset of thinking through everything that I intake. My mind is the filter that all of these things are going through. And so getting in the word before social media or before the rest of the world comes in to saturate your life, getting into God's word, having some time in prayer, taking some time to think about the things that God has provided for you. What are you grateful for? And then also some other things to keep you sane. Set a time limit for your social media, or whatever it is for you that you have trouble with. How can you set a boundary for that and say, this is all I'm taking in for that day, and then after that I'm going to spend time with the Lord, spend time with family, those kinds of things. And then obviously a huge one for spiritual, physical, and mental is having a Sabbath, rest and Sabbath, whether that be, whatever day it may be for you or whatever that looks like for you. Be intentional about this. This is something that I didn't really think about a lot in years past, but more recently have tried to be more intentional about this. And it is huge. When I don't get a good Sabbath in, a good rest day, a full rest day, and not getting on work and, not doing all the different things, it makes a huge difference in the way that I reset and the way that I feel going into the next week. So have a day and rest and recover. Spend time with the people that you love. Spend time with God. And so I really think that one is overlooked a lot. And then obviously watching what comes in. We mentioned this earlier, but the music, the things that you look at, all of those things are going to make a difference. So watch what comes in, and then obviously what comes in is eventually going to come out. So watch your intake on those things. So with that being said, let's get into a few questions here. Um, I'm looking at the chat here. Doug, in reality, it has been hard. It has been a hard time doing what you're asking. Is an area I know I have to work on. Yeah, Doug. Curious what area you're talking about there, but getting into a few questions here that I get a lot. And if you guys have any questions that are watching, I'd be happy to answer those as well. But the first one being, is it wrong to care about fitness goals like building muscle, like fat loss, looking better, I guess you could say, based goals, if you're supposed to be focusing on God and coming about this through a biblical lens of stewarding the body that God has given you? So to answer that question, I would say it depends, right? I don't think there's anything wrong with wanting to be better, to look better for your wife, right? Like I think that's a pure heart, and that comes from a good place. I think if you're in the gym and you're wanting to look better, to draw attention to yourself, try to get the hot chicks, whatever it is, then I think that's when it's time to have a check. I also think, if you are looking to get married, single, right? Like people say, not looking at the looks and going off of who the person really is. Yes, I know that's the most important side, but if we're all honest with ourselves, attraction is important as well. And so, not that it comes from a place of selfishness, vanity, all of these things, but there is a part that does play into that. Looking better can help with your confidence as well. And so, I think it all depends on your heart posture when we talk about this. It comes from a place of, where are you coming from with this? What are your thoughts with this? Is it because you're trying to bring honor and glory to yourself, or is it because you're trying to bring honor and glory to God's name? So that's really what I would filter that one through. The next one here, what's the simplest diet that I can actually stick to? So with this one, We could go all day talking about diet and nutrition, all the things. But I like the way that this one asked, what is the simplest diet that I can stick to? What I always tell people is, what foods has God made in the purest form? Eat those foods. So it's not that we're cutting out carbs. It's not that we're going keto or whatever it may be. What foods has God made in the purest form? Now, think about meat, your vegetables, your fruits, sweet potatoes, all of those things. Like, those are God made foods. And yes, I understand nowadays a lot of those foods have stuff on them, or they're genetically modified or whatever it may be, but try to simplify this and ask yourself, what foods has God made in the purest form, and try to stick to those kinds of foods as much as possible. And then the next one, I know what to do, but I can't stay disciplined. How do I fix that? This is really going to come down to the mindset, having a system in place, and having a plan. And that's really a big piece of what I work on with clients, is getting them a system. A lot of people, for the most part, it's not knowing what to do. Most people have the information, they have the all the knowledge that they need, right? You can go on the internet and find whatever you want to out there. But what it is taking that information and actually applying it to your life. How can you apply this information and get action with it to actually make progress towards your goals? And so with this, I would say a few things. Getting your mindset is going to be number one. Why are you doing this? Your identity, where are you coming from? All of these things. And I've got a few videos, if you look back on my channel, with some of this stuff. And then from there, building a plan and a system that's repeatable and that's going to be simple. If you need help with this, reach out to me for one-on-one coaching, or click the link in the description below this video, and you can go through and apply for one-on-one coaching. And then the next thing would be grab my free 7-day blueprint. I've also got that link down in the description below. All you have to do is put in your email for that one, and you'll receive that. And so between those things, that is what I would do in terms of discipline and really getting started. And also, I say all these things with, okay, when you think about the coaching side of things and all of that, having accountability is huge. That is a huge piece of where you want to grow in any area of your life. And so having some accountability, some community, I mentioned that earlier, some community in your life can be a huge help. So with all that being said, I want to thank you guys for watching this video. Getting stronger physically, mentally, and spiritually as a man, and becoming the man that God has called you to be. And so thank you guys for watching this video. Be sure to like it up, share it with a friend, subscribe if you haven't already, and we will see you guys in the next one. Have a blessed day.